Thank you, everyone. Next up, we have The Art of Henna by Elise.
Hi, everyone. By a show of hands, how many of you have gotten henna before? How many of you have heard of it? Okay, amazing. So most everyone is familiar. Well, today I'm here to tell you about how I transformed my love for this art into my senior project. Diving deeper into learning about the history and making of it, and walking you through the process of crafting my own book of designs. Like most of us, it was quite a journey figuring out what I wanted to do for my project. But essentially, I knew I wanted my work to reflect the creativity I have developed throughout my life. I knew I wanted it to be something that brought me joy amidst this busy time, and I wanted it to be something that opened doors to meeting new people, as that is something I value greatly, meeting and connecting with new people. So after months of searching, I landed on something that was already pretty prevalent in my life: henna. I knew that before starting the process, I needed to find a mentor familiar with the craft who could help me along the way. I started off online looking for people in the area, but didn't have much luck there. And then one day, I was talking with a close friend, and it turns out her cousin has been working with Mendy for over 30 years. So I reached out, and within a week, she had agreed to work with me. Her name is Ashra Rahim, and she lives in Los Angeles, California, so we've only been able to communicate virtually. However, she's been very helpful and supportive throughout the process. Henna has been a part of my life since I was very young. I grew up in California, so it wasn't uncommon to be walking along Venice Beach and come across vendors selling their craft. I can still vividly remember my first encounter with it. I was about 8 years old, and my family and I were at a party. I remember being so enthralled with the henna artist that they had hired and all the intricate designs that she was doing on others. In my younger years, I would always do those sparkly temporary tattoos along my arm, constantly finding different ways to decorate my body, and apparently my mom's too. Sorry about that. So naturally, I convinced my parents to let me get one. The idea of something that was long-lasting yet temporary felt so cool to me. Even now, I think that's what draws me in. And as I get older and permanent tattoos start to become a possibility, I like that I get to express my creativity on myself without the permanence. Henna is a natural dye made from leaves of the henna plant, indigenous to areas stretching from Africa to the western Pacific Rim, and eventually spread across South Asia before becoming worldwide. Originally, it was used for its natural cooling properties in hot climates over 5,000 years ago. It evolved into a decorative art form for weddings and festivals, symbolizing love, prosperity, joy, and celebration. Rumored that the darker the henna, the deeper the love. Henna can also be used for dyeing hair and fabrics. For my project, however, my main focus was the art of henna on skin, also known as Mendy. There are two main kinds of henna: natural plant-based, which has a reddish-brown color, that's what I usually use, and then there's chemically altered black henna, which can actually be hazardous to the skin. And though there are some natural alternatives, I try to steer clear overall. I remember purchasing my first kit back in middle school. It was a cheap, low-quality kind from Amazon, but it did the trick for whatever doodles I wanted to draw on my skin that day. Looking back, this definitely wasn't something I would recommend, as the formula was not authentic, and there were probably various chemicals in it that didn't belong, similar to what I just mentioned. However, no harm was done, so I'm sure it was fine. And thankfully, by the time I began doing henna more frequently on myself and my friends, I had found some better options. Some from local markets around Austin, or gifts from friends. And with the help of my mentor and YouTube, I was even able to make some of my own. Given that it was my first time making something like this, I decided to base it off of a simpler recipe, which only required 4 ingredients. I started off by pouring my sifted henna powder into a metal bowl, then adding in an equal amount of lemon juice and mixed the two together until it became a thick paste. Next, I mixed in some white granulated sugar to help the paste stay moist and stick better to the skin. Lastly, I poured in some tea tree oil to help the dye release from the powder and make the stain stronger. Then I covered it with plastic wrap, making sure it was airtight, and left it to sit overnight. The next day, I scooped it out and transferred it into one of my pre-wrapped cones to begin testing it out. As you can see here, I was trying it out on a faded design from a couple days prior. And it definitely made it darker. However, when I tried it on blank parts of my skin, it was a little too light for my liking, showcasing that the formula alone could use a little extra work. Going forward, I want to try adding in tea, which helps with the darker stain, and also experiment with different kinds of oils such as eucalyptus and lavender to see if it has a different effect. For my project, I knew I wanted to work on something that I could take with me into the future, while also reflecting my work along the way. So, like I mentioned before, I decided to create a booklet of my designs. Though I'd been doing henna for about a year, I hadn't really been doing it with my project in mind, so most of my designs went undocumented, meaning I did not have enough material for a book and needed to get started right away. Over the past couple of months, I've spent my time intentionally working with my mentor and peers to create and photograph designs, taking every henna opportunity that came my way, during Bamberger, Techo, or even just weekend hangouts. A lot of the time, people knew what they wanted, and all I had to do was copy it onto their skin. While other times, they gave me the freedom, and I got to come up with my own images, each ranging from either 5 minutes to 2 hours. I even got to work my first event recently for an 11-year-old's birthday party, where I spent about 5 hours working on 15 girls and then their parents. It was a great experience, and especially as a beginner, it's really helpful to have practice in settings like this. Now, moving on to the book itself. I intentionally chose to have it be in a binder style, as I wanted to be able to add more designs as I went along. It is structured into categories by what I've done so far, with estimated price tags on each page if I'm in a setting where it's needed. I started off by printing out my photographs and cutting them into small squares to fit in the page. Once I had placed them where I liked, I then glued them down and began decorating, making sure to label each page by category. Lastly, I wanted to add a good amount of blank pages with a pencil attached for anyone who wanted to create their own image that I could then transfer onto their skin. To me, that's such a huge part of what henna is about, getting to create something individually unique to oneself, so I wanted to honor that in my book. Here are some of the designs I've done so far. These two here only took about 10 minutes each, while these were a little more time-consuming. The one closest to me probably took about 30 minutes, whereas the far one was a little over an hour. I also have pretty shaky hands for some unknown reason, just naturally, and so getting the really fine detail is a little tricky and takes more time for me. I also wanted to give you guys an idea of what the process is like. So for this one here, I began by mapping it out on the back and then filling it in. Once the henna dries, you're able to rub it off, and ideally you don't wash it for 24 hours after to have the best result. And there's the final image over there. Human connection was probably my favorite part of the project itself, as I mentioned earlier. Taking that time out of our day to be present with another person is definitely something a lot of us take for granted. I got to experience this during the service trip some of us took to the Dominican Republic during spring break. I made some really meaningful connections with the people living in the community where we were building, and despite the language barrier, word got out about the henna, and I had people coming up to me during breaks asking for some. It started off with the volunteers we were working with, and then some of the younger kids in the village caught word and came over to either get some for themselves or try it on me. We'd either sit in silence or do our best to form conversations, but either way, the moments were authentic and wholesome, definitely memories I will never forget. I personally find henna to be very calming, and though it is traditionally used when celebrating, I often find it comes up a lot in my everyday life. I almost always carry it in my purse to use when I'm stressed and need an out-breath, or just to pass time. So in many ways, this project gave me time to practice the art of slowing down and to take time for not only those around me, but myself as well. I definitely think my younger self would think it's pretty cool that I'm doing this, as it was always something that really excited me as a kid. So I hope going forward I can keep making her proud as I continue my journey of henna. Speaking of that, Going forward, I definitely hope this stays a part of my life, even if it's only as a side hustle I revisit every now and then. As of right now, I plan on working an event on the 18th for a friend's business launch, which I'm looking forward to as it will give me even more practice in a crowded and fast-paced setting. In addition to this, something my mom and I found when researching different opportunities were henna crowns for chemo patients. Around Austin, I was able to find a couple different places that work to create these designs for people going through hair loss to help boost confidence during treatments, acting as a personal, artistic expression of strength. This is definitely something I'll work towards once I'm a little more experienced, as I feel very moved by it and want to be a part of it. And of course, while we're still on this topic, if any of you are interested in getting henna for yourself or just want to learn more about it, feel free to reach out and I would be happy to help. Lastly, before I wrap things up, I couldn't have done this presentation without the support from those around me, so I'd like to give a couple thank yous. Starting off with my faculty sponsor, Profe Prince, for holding space as I figured out what I wanted to do and providing insight along the way. To my parents, who made sure I had everything I needed to make this project come to life. To my amazing mentor, Ashra, over there on the far side. To each faculty member who took time to sit through our rehearsals and give feedback, especially my mom. To all of you for taking the time to come and support us seniors in all our endeavors. And lastly, to each and every person who let me experiment on them. There are more, but there's that. Thank you guys so much. That was a lot of help. Thank you all so much for listening. What questions do you have for me? Winona. The question was, when I do designs, am I copying from a reference or just freehanding? It really depends on who I'm working on and what they want. Sometimes they come to me with a reference, and that's actually really helpful, and other times I just get to freeform, and that's also really fun. So it depends. Yes? That's a good question. I think it's more centered around celebration. And then I'd say no. The answer to that would probably be no. It's more for celebrational use, yeah. Yes. The longest I've taken to do a design? It would probably be the cross. That took about like an hour and a half, I think. Yeah. Yes. Ooh, that's a good question. What was my favorite design? Ooh, I really like that one that I did on Chloe, the hand. Yeah. Yes.
Roughly how long would a hand last?
That's a good question. How long would henna last on the hand? So, I mean, it's tricky because that's what we wash the most, and so it'll fade faster, but there are ways to treat it to lengthen the lasting process. Maybe a week, 5 days? Yeah, it depends. Yes?
What's the difference in the materials you use for the red henna designs and the green or the dark brown?
The difference in material, by material do you mean ingredients to make it? I think it really just depends on, I think for darker stains that have the red tones, that's where tea comes in. You steep tea bags and add it in. And then for like the more brown, that's kind of the one that I made, and it didn't have tea. So I don't know, it depends on how much you add of everything, I think, but I'm not too versatile in the making yet, but hopefully I'll learn that as I go. Yes? Ooh, in my book? Maybe one of the ones I showed. I really like the floral one that I did, yeah. Yes, back there. That's a good idea. Given that the book was more for me to take with me to events to use as references for what people wanted, I just kept it to the designs. But I might add in a couple recipes. I like that idea. Thank you. Yes? What I like to draw the most? Probably flowers, anything floral. Yeah. Yes? The question was if I have a hard time finding inspiration for designs that people want. Sometimes, yeah. I mean, there's always the thing of whether they'll like it or not when they're giving me more freedom and I have to come up with it. But it isn't too hard. We seem to come to an agreement. I asked them if they'd be okay with me doing this, and they say yeah. Okay, one more question. Okay, yes. I'm so sorry, could you repeat that? Ooh, do I hope to build a brand selling henna products in the future? Definitely, I definitely want to do it on others, maybe as, like I mentioned, a sort of side hustle. But in terms of selling the henna I make, I probably wouldn't unless I work on it a lot and perfect the recipe, because I wouldn't really trust what I made. But yeah. Okay, thank you guys so much.